Why has it been suppressed?
Because it takes away the worldly power of kings and politicians and priests that want power for their own sake. Because spiritual science, which I would call it instead of religion, spiritual science is above everything. Because spiritual science tell everybody who's interested, not only some chosen few, here is a map, a roadmap from earth to heaven, metaphorically speaking, to your own inner kingdom, how to go about it.
Yeah.
Follow my example, said Yeshua, and you can do even greater wonders than I. He was not talking about churches or things like that, institutions. He was talking about setting one man free. Yeah, exactly. The kingdom of heaven is within you.
Hi everybody, I'm Anders Bolling. Welcome to this episode of Mind the Shift, which is recorded in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My guest is not online, but here in person, in real life. Welcome to the program, Lars Muhl.
Thank you.
And I'm really happy to get the opportunity to meet you here, where you're lecturing and holding workshops for a couple of days. I discovered you fairly recently, actually, and let me see if I can pinpoint a very brief description of your sojourn here on planet Earth so far. As far as I understand, you're a musician and an actor who has turned...
No, I'm not an actor.
You haven't been an actor?
Never.
Okay, so that was a misunderstanding. But you're a musician from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you turned a mystic, healer, and a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that that's about right?
I mean, it's very hard to define what this kind of work is. So I guess that could be as good as anything else you could come up with.
Okay, and you have written many books. I'm in the process of reading 4 of them actually simultaneously. There is this trilogy, the O Manuscript, which consists of three books really.
Yeah.
So I'm reading that, and they were released in the early 2000s, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you've written a book called The Law of Light, The Wisdom of a Broken Heart, and others. Not all are translated into English.
No, I have done around 22 books in
22?
Danish.
Oh yeah.
And but some of them are translated, because. Yeah. It's a huge work to translate such things.
It is. And now the latest one is this beautiful little, what I would call a spiritual guidebook, The God Formula. See if you can focus. The God Formula, a beautiful little book, which I'm also reading right now, and came out last year, I understand.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about what happened in your life that made you come to this kind of activity and this kind of life that you're leading now.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the person that has been your primary teacher in life, your primary life teacher, who you call the Seer. But before that, I want to back up a little bit. You were in midlife, I think, when you really changed your life path to do these things.
You could say that.
But you had memories and experiences already when you were a child that one would perhaps describe as mystical. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. I was 10 years old, and my little sister was 6 years old, and she died from a brain tumor during operation in the hospital. And that caused such a shock for me that from that moment on, my whole life changed overnight. I started to develop I became very sensitive. It was like a veil was drawn aside, and I was starting to be aware of other people's pains. I could identify with their troubles and see through them. when grown-up people said one thing, I could hear that they meant something different, and I could not make up why they said one thing and did something different, you know. And it was very scary for me. I stopped going to school at that age, and I just went by myself. And
you were 10 years old?
Yeah. Okay. And nobody knew really what to do with a boy like me at that time. If it had been today, I probably had a diagnosis of ADHD or whatever they call it, and given medicine. And so, but at that time, they absolutely did not know what to do. And that was my luck, because what happened was actually what was needed, you know, to let me be, you know. So I started one winter day, I was roaming my hometown and the woods around it. And it was winter, and suddenly it was so cold, so I needed a place.
This is in Denmark. So
I needed a place to go. So there was a church, and the door was open. So I went in. There was music. There was an organist playing, and I was so astonished, you know, of the music. Bach and Messiaen and Buxtehude and all these great masters playing this organ music. So I found out where all the organists in all the churches, what days they were rehearsing around our house. So on Mondays I went to that church, the next day to that, and Wednesday to that church. You know, so every day I could go and just sit and listen to this music. And that was my healing and my musical education. So that was how I became, when suddenly, you know, this is the 60s now we are talking, and the Beatles started and all this. And I knew I had to find out how to be in this world, because I could not handle ordinary things, you know. Despite that, I have had loads of jobs, you know, but I was only a guest here.
You felt as a guest in?
Yeah, I never really felt that I belonged here.
No.
So I became member of a band, and that was the start of a life in music business, you know. Not because I've had any ambition, but I needed a place to be. And while I was there, already as 15 years old, I started to study all the spiritual masters and all the spiritual traditions. And I did that all the way through up till when I met the Seer. So I had prepared all my life.
You were very prepared, but you have described some where that this was the kind of an intellectual knowledge.
Oh yeah, of course. You see, I already had this opening towards the spiritual sphere, so to speak. But I wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I can resonate.
So I tried first and foremost to read about what is this, you know, because nobody could give me an answer. You know, when I was 14 years old, I received a letter, and within it there was a small book. It was written by the Sufi master Hazrat Inayat Khan, and there was no sender on the envelope. So to this day, I don't know who sent it. But that book became my opening into studying. When I opened it, the first thing that met my eyes was I just opened it randomly. If you will approach us, we will bow down and lift you up. That was the words. And to me, that was, a message from above, from the angels telling me, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And if you will try to find us, we will bow down and lift you up. You know? So that became a kind of mantra for me. Okay, I need to find out what that means. How can I approach them? And I tried different things, but at the same time, I was also involved more and more in the music with the band I was playing. For example, in 1969, I was 18 years old. We went for a tour to Israel to play there for a few months. And of course, for me, that was a totally opening, because there I met the Essenes, Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, all this that I had been part of in a former lifetime. And that was my first meeting in this life with all this tradition. And that became my focus from then on.
Okay.
but I did not really practice anything. I tried this, I tried that, but I needed somebody to convince my intellectual side what this was really all about. I was trying to understand it, but actually you don't have to understand.
Because you had all along, or would you say that you all along had a sense that this is not really what you're supposed to be doing here, but you need to do something, so you continued playing music?
I think what I was doing there was what I could do at the time and what I should do, because later on I understood that it was an education in how to stand up and present something. When you have been on a stage the most of your life performing music, then you are not afraid of going up there anymore.
No.
And you have been through all the the childish stuff, about being a star or ego stuff and all that. And you come to a point where you find out that there's absolutely no value in it. It's not what it's all about. So, but you need to know how to go about this, when you go up on the stage and you present things, and you find out that you cannot connect with the audience if you're not honest. You have to genuinely be there. And if you have nothing to offer, don't go there. Then it is just pretentious, then you just pretend to be something that you aren't. You need to have something that is worth people's times. If you call for people to come listen here, I have something, you're invited to come, and people come, you need to have something that is of value, or else those people will just go away and they will never come back, and they will say that was just another fraud. And I think that is what this is very much about for me, to really be genuine to myself also and what I do.
To go back a little bit to childhood again, I think you have also mentioned one episode where you said to your mother, you said this yesterday. I was at Lars's lecture yesterday evening, and then he mentioned an episode where you told your mother, or you said to your mother, I think you were younger than 10 years. I think you were only 6 or something. You said to her,
8 years old.
Or 8 years old. Mother, I think this is so primitive.
Yeah, here.
You said that.
Yeah, I really found it.
And it really came from the heart. This.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but I feel that it was genuinely because I thought that why I'm here, why do I come down in this frequency?
Yeah.
And
did you have memories from previous lives or anything like that?
Not consciously. No. I had a lot of dreams, and I think we all have at that time, that have something to do with that. But we don't process it, and we are not able to reflect intellectually into it. But I'm sure we have a lot of stuff coming in,
Yeah.
I know Rudolf Steiner and also Edgar Cayce are talking about that the first 7 years of our life, everything that we are going through there, all the games we are playing with other children have something to do with our former lifetimes. Okay. We are doing that over again in the games we play.
So that's
and I think very much when boys are being warriors and cowboys and whatever, it has something to do with something that we have done so many times in our lifetime, being, masculine and being warriors and, have to fight for our country or fight for our family or fight for ourselves, or whatever, I think it lies so deep within the masculine.
Interesting that you say the age 6 or 7 there, because I've heard other people in this line of work, as maybe it's the wrong expression, but anyway, people like Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
No.
Freelancing independent researchers into spiritual things and the connection between spirituality and science. And they are talking about the brain waves that between the age of 0 and about 7, the brain waves are mainly in theta. So it's like you're in hypnosis, and everything you're being taught then stays, so to speak, because you don't start self-reflecting until you're maybe 7. or so.
Okay.
Which is interesting that you say this about. But what do you think? Do you think we all come into this world with, like you say, memories from previous lives, and that we gradually pull the veil on top of us when we are like 2, 3, 4 years old, and before maybe or do we actually forget everything even before we enter this world?
It's a combination of both, I think.
Okay.
I think a lot of people have some kind of remembrance that they bring with them into this incarnation. But the social conditioning, the well-meaning people that are welcoming us into this world, our family, our parent, that wants to do the best for us, they misunderstand a lot of things there. And they want to us be normal, you know.
Yeah.
And because, you know, we cannot have, oh no, don't do that, because we don't do that here, you know. So a lot of things maybe will be, you take them back, you hold back on a lot of things. Maybe actually the purpose of your life, you're holding back on it, and you're not developing into what you were actually supposed to do.
So to
yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of things that hopefully, I hope that there will happen something now that we start to understand that we need to find a whole new frequency and raise the bar and free people from these bonds, you know.
But don't you think that the general purpose of, I mean, I don't know more than anybody else, of course, probably less about what life really is at its core and where we come from and all that. But I do believe that there is something that we come from and that we go to. But I hear often that the purpose of being here in this 3D world is that we should forget who we are in order to be able to grow, to have our souls grow.
Yeah, that's an idea you can believe in, or you can,
or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right for me.
Yeah, I'm not saying I believe it, but you hear that a lot.
Okay, and I don't know about it. No.
But if we do forget, then something happened on the way.
We don't forget anything. It's there. It's
we are
always
conditioned
there.
To forget it.
Yeah, I think so. It's all there.
Yeah.
And it will pop up if you need the information in the situation, if it's serious enough. But it has always been there, and it will always be there. You will take it with you, and you will come back in some other form or wherever you're going, and you'll bring this knowledge with you. There's no doubt about it.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the Seer and when you met him, what he has meant for you, who he was, and in what context you met him, and what he has meant for you.
Yeah, I was withdrawing from music business and living in a small island in Denmark called Samsø. And I started to write books there, right? I've always been writing way back since I was a kid. You know, I have written journals of everything I went through after my sister died. You know, it's all there, you know. Okay. So I have always been writing. And so it was also actually my second book called Seer. That was the cause of me meeting the Seer. But I did not know that before, long after, a year after I met him. But the second book I wrote was in 1993. And a good friend of mine, the woman who connected me to him when I was sick and needed somebody to do something, she gave that book to him because she was very fond of that book. And that book was my first book that was kind of a result of stream of consciousness. I was just writing. Mm-hmm. And in that book, I prophesy my meeting with this man in the Pyrenees, you see, and a lot of other things. But I did not know that before a long time after. So I got sick and I lay in bed for 3 years until this friend of mine connected me to the Seer. And in a telephone conversation, 5 minutes, he told me, okay, I will fix that. I will see you in half a year. And until then, everything will be all right. And then he hung up. And a few minutes later, I felt a quiet knocking in my neck. And then I was so tired afterwards, I went to sleep, slept for 2 hours, woke up, and I was completely fresh.
Oh, you were healed completely.
My world, who had been in black and white for 3 years, was suddenly in color. I could hear the birds sing in the other end of the island. I mean, it was just a miracle.
And you had been very, very sick for several years.
Nobody knew what I was. I was just lying in bed, and I really had pains, and I was really down and out. So, yeah, he did that. And then after half a year, he asked me to come to Monsieur, and he took me in as his apprentice, and I started to work with him from day one. And after the first week, he sent me back home to quit music business and to do it so effectively that there was no way back for me, which was really difficult, because I earned good money there and I had a reputation, and an ID, So, but anyway, I knew that was the only way to do. So the right thing to do. And then he asked me to stay home on the island for half a year without doing anything, just being. And that was the hardest part, really hard. And if I managed that, he asked me to come down to Spain. And that was the real beginning of my apprenticeship with him for almost 9 years, until he died in 2007. So that's the short version of that.
Yeah.
And as you said, he was a man who never really read that much, but he had practiced a lot. And I came with all my knowledge, and I haven't practiced anything really. So from him, I learned what the value of practicing and what it really was. And
you think you were complementary in that sense?
Yeah, I really think so. And so one day when we were working in his home in Spain, in Fuengirola, I had a small room there in his apartment. And in that room was a small bookshelf. That was all his books. And one of them was this book, Seer, that I had written. So I thought, what is this? So I took it and I went to him. What is this? I said, I did not know you were reading a good literature.
Okay.
He said, yeah, that book is actually, that is why you are here. And then he said, yeah, I like that book because... and from that moment on, he called me always the scribe. And he told me I have been a scribe at the Essene and being one of those who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls and all these things,
Wow.
So
that's cool.
I don't know. It's just.
But it's very crucial. Those documents are very crucial. So I want to talk about those, of course, because you are writing a lot about that information that got lost, that we found some years after the Second World War in the Dead Sea Scrolls and also in Nag Hammadi in Egypt.
Exactly.
All these lost documents that were supposed to be parts of the Bible, or they weren't supposed to be that, but they were not included in the Bible.
No,
anyway.
exactly.
And you seem to have contributed in this world very much by wanting to retell the message of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, as we often say, but you say Yeshua and Mariam the Magdalene, which is more correctly interpreted from their names. And this message is radically different from the message of the official church, conveyed by the official church, or in essence, it's the message of the Essenes, whom you mentioned here, the keepers of light. So tell us about this is a big question, but what is the significance of Yeshua and Mariam the Magdalene? What did they actually want to convey to us, which is different from what we hear in school and in church?
First and foremost, the importance of integrating the masculine and the feminine. And this not only being a matter of between man and woman, it has something to do with a code, a creative code that is when everything was created. it was the merging of a plus and a minus, a yin and a yang that became one, And that was their way of telling. Actually, there is a German author that I really like very much called Franz Alt, who wrote a wonderful book about Jesus being the first new man and Mary Magdalene the first new woman. And that was already in the 80s. And I remember reading it, it really ignited something in me because it made me understand some of the scriptures like the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip, where a lot of things about masculine and feminine are mentioned, and to understand what is the meaning of all this, the bridal chamber and the merging of those two, And that's exactly what I think they were all about. They tried to embody and manifest each one an archetypical masculine and feminine, showing people if this is how it's going to be done, you see? And of course, they were so much in front of their time,
Of course.
And at the same time, they wanted to set people free from all kind of traditional religious bounding that had something to do with the temple in Jerusalem, with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, who very much wanted to bind people, and keep them, in their grip of power, and receive the taxes and all this thing, But of course, the Essenes had other agendas. They wanted to be servants to people, So the problem being for the priesthood in Jerusalem was that ordinary people always went to the Essenes for help because they were healers and they did not take any money or anything.
Yeah.
And Yeshua was educated by them as John the Baptist, Johannan Baptist was. So,
but this knowledge that they conveyed, Jesus and Magdalene, and others also, but these two people were very, very pivotal. This knowledge has been suppressed for ages, not only since then, but even before that. I think it was suppressed in Egypt and in other places.
Yeah.
Why has it been suppressed?
Because it takes away the worldly power of kings and politicians and priests that want power for their own sake. Because spiritual science, which I would call it instead of religion, spiritual science is above everything. Because spiritual science tell everybody who's interested, not only some chosen few, here is a map, a roadmap from earth to heaven, metaphorically speaking, to your own inner kingdom, how to go about it.
Yeah.
Follow my example, said Yeshua, and you can do even greater wonders than I. He was not talking about churches or things like that, institutions. He was talking about setting one man free. Yeah, exactly. The kingdom of heaven is within you. And that was the message of both of them. And they embodied that. They tried to show that in the way they were living, the way they were conducting with each other. And you can read in the Gospel of Philip from Nakamadi that Mariam Magdalene was the chosen one that he often kissed on the mouth, telling us that they were not only married, but she was only a highly initiated woman. So
because normally married people didn't do
no, they did not go around and were intimate in public. But kissing each other on the mouth was a way of recognizing another initiated one and revering that one also, like the kiss of Judas, for example.
Yeah.
So there's so many, when you start to connect the dots of everything written about them, here, there, and everywhere, you get a clear picture.
Yeah.
And there's no way around it.
No.
Not only, you cannot come back, but we have a theory, and we have had that for thousands of years yet. Stuff your theory.
Yeah.
Because
doesn't matter if it's thousands of years.
Now we have some scriptures that tell something different. Scriptures that have been lying there for almost 2,000 years. So don't give us any kind of shit now. Let's start here. And I really don't understand why you are not taking all this new knowledge into the church if you want to kind of want to have the church going into the new times, if it has any purpose, it must pick up the very teachings, and now the inner teachings, instead of being a museum or whatever it tries to be,
Are you sometimes having discussions about this with church people?
Oh yeah.
What
I'm also invited to church.
Yeah, you are?
I'm also having priests in Denmark coming to my workshops.
What do they say about these things?
A lot of them want to know more about it.
You want to change?
But of course they're not allowed to, because they have a circulum that is very, code of conduct that is very, stiff and rigid.
But I mean, if they were to integrate all this knowledge, this ancient, this real, true knowledge about who we are at the core, then we wouldn't need churches, as you say, and we wouldn't even need Christianity.
No,
there wouldn't be anything called Christianity.
The way of Yeshua was never called Christianity. It was called those of the way.
Yeah.
It was the Romans who nicknamed them Christians.
Yeah.
Those who believe in the Messiah, because Messiah is the anointed one. So that was just a nickname for them. Themselves, they called it the way. Yeah.
The one and only.
The way.
Yeah, the way.
That is, we are the ones of the way, And that is something that you should remember, that Christianity wasn't even invented at the time of Yeshua. He had never heard about it.
No.
He did not know what it was.
No.
In the way we understand it today. It was invented along the way and instituted 325 years after he died. So, see, it's...
yeah. I know it was the church fathers who really created Christianity.
Exactly.
It was not God and it was not Jesus.
No. And it was also them who condemned all the scriptures that didn't fit into the picture they wanted to create.
But would you say that, I mean, there are so many spiritually awakened people all through history in different cultures, but we know about the Christian culture and what happened in the Middle East a lot. And you have studied this, and you have focused a lot on this. Of course, your books are a lot about Yeshua and Mariam and all that. But would you say that this is because of your interest in those two figures, or are they actually more pivotal than others, perhaps? All through history, you can compare with the Buddha, or
they are teachers, and actually there's deep knowledge about the soul of Yeshua. That he was the first soul. He was representing the very first soul that incarnated. But you see, the real mystery that we must not miss is the crucifixion, which had been debated a lot. Did it happen or did it not? No, he was stoned, or he lived on after that, and all these things. Yes, there was a resurrection, but we have to know about what was the crucifixion. A lot of things in the Bible are metaphorical, but this happened in real life. He was crucified, and he also was resurrected. But the crucifixion was in the same way as it was real happening. It was also a metaphor. You can read in the Bible the moment that he said, when he was hanging on the cross, he said, Father, I hereby commit my spirit in your hands. Just think about it. Whenever we are standing, facing a problem, a real life problem, we tend to give up, like, I give up,
Yeah, surrender.
What he says is he gives it up, I hereby commit my spirit in your hand. He gave it up. In the same moment when he gave his spirit up, a lightning comes down in the temple in Jerusalem and split the veil to the Holy of the Holies in two. So the Holy of the Holies is exposed, totally exposed. Mary the Magdalene is standing right at the foot of the cross. She's instrumental in this. She knows this. She knows what this is all about. That is why in that song of Mariam the Magdalene, because I saw that,
Mm.
I saw you there standing, trembling by the cross. You were the thunder and the lightning that ripped the veil apart. In the Holy of the Holiest, you were opening our hearts. This is a metaphor for when the veil comes down, when you give something up and you crucify your ego and you give yourself to God, then that veil will come down like a thunder and lightning and rip that veil apart, and your heart will open up like a flower. The Holy of the Holies will be open. Everything that you have been working on with spirituality is happening in that moment that you are able to give up your ego, crucify it, and give yourself to God. Just think about it.
Yeah.
That is so beautiful. Then comes the resurrection. After 3 days, Mary Magdalene goes to the grave. He's not there anymore. There's only the shroud. The shroud that we today know as the Shroud of Turin, which is another proof of his resurrection and how that went,
Yeah.
That we have all the things like, and yet we don't understand it. We construct all kinds of weird stories about what it is and what it, because
we knew about crucifixion, what that was, and
we don't understand, the depth of the levels of what we are being presenting for. And though it's so simple, it's there.
And this is something that is possible for every soul.
Of course, follow my example, and you can do even greater wonders than I.
Is it the same thing as others would call awakening? Would you say
it is to be reborn?
Yeah.
It is to be born again, and this is something that can be done over and over. Every time we forget it, we must do it once more. To give it up.
To give it all up, yeah. Yes, it's so simple and so hard for a three-dimensional human being. But it's very beautiful if you see it that way. So the God formula, this little book here, is the formula that you have found is, as far as I understand what you were talking about earlier here, a unification of polarities, masculine, feminine, and God. Or what would you call the source? Or
yeah, exactly.
And if those are combined,
if those two are combined, so that the masculine is not masculine, the feminine is not feminine, they become one.
They can move mountains.
Yeah, they kind of accepts and take responsibility for the image of God within them, and becoming one, doing that. Then they can move mountains. Then they enter the kingdom of heaven and can do whatever is needed to be done.
Sounds a little bit like the Trinity in the church, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. What do you make of that?
Yeah, another misunderstanding of power.
So maybe it's the same thing, but they just twisted it.
Yeah, because they did not want any feminine in there.
That's true. Okay, so this is fascinating. We could talk, of course, hours about the life of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. But let's talk a little bit about the current times.
Yeah.
I saw that in a recent blog post here, you spoke about our propensity to follow charismatic leaders, especially in time of crisis, and to accept norms and solutions that would otherwise have been unacceptable. And Carl Gustav Jung, you mentioned him also in some context.
Yeah,
many do, and I love him and his work. He talked about psychic epidemics. Would you say that we are right now in a psychic pandemic rather than a virus pandemic?
Yeah, very much. Or
more so, no?
Very much so. Yeah.
So what?
And we have been for many years.
Yeah.
We have been.
It's not just the condition that we have right now.
It started already in the late 1800s, beginning of 1900s. With all the industrial
so there was a shift.
Yeah, there was a big shift there because at the same time there was a huge awakening with Blavatsky and Steiner and all these kind of movements that was, and Carl Gustav Jung, there was also this industrial movement that really was set in movement there, and you see the result now. It is the industries, the big industries that are setting the. I mean, they are having the power for everything. They can dictate whatever is going to happen. You know.
I talked to a friend yesterday, and she said that there's a Dutch guy who has made a video where he concludes that every company in the world is owned by only two big corporations.
Yeah.
And he has done the work, gone into the stock markets and looked at the ownership of every company and found two. Yeah. It's really fascinating. Many people have conspiracy theories about what's going on, what's really happening, about this, that there are some entities pulling strings, and I don't know what you think about those theories.
I don't think they are theories. Of course, there's sometimes maybe something that is a little bit over the edge, but in overall, this has been long before any pandemic or whatever they call it. This has been going on for so many years. It's just been building up, and now money talks everywhere. You can buy anybody almost to get them to do anything you want.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing about it. Because nobody believes in God anymore. Only very few know what God is really. They don't know about the consciousness, the God consciousness. They don't know about what they are playing with.
But would you say that people were closer to God in 200-300 years ago?
No, some were, some weren't. That has always been the problem,
Yeah.
And but the understanding of what God is have changed, and will change, must change, have to change. Because now more and more people understand that what before was taken literally was metaphorical,
Yeah.
And the Bible is very much, already at the time of Jesus, there was this Jewish philosopher, Philo, living in Alexandria, said you must not read the Old Testament or the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, and take it literally. It is metaphorical speaking. They knew all about that. They were masters of metaphors, the Essenes and people like that. And that is why we haven't moved forward actually in that. Now we have electricity and all these kinds of all small gadgets and all this. It's very good, but they have become God. This has become God. But there is another light than electric light. There is consciousness on a higher level.
But if we were to completely connect to our higher selves, we wouldn't really need to be in the 3-dimensional world at all. So one could think that as long as we are here in this physical world, we need some physical aids and
of course
and things.
There's nothing wrong with that. But the
problem, like electricity,
of course. But the problem arises when that becomes God.
Yeah.
Every new electric gadget is the new God.
Yes, I understand.
Have we got the new version of this or that? No. I must have it.
Yes.
And when you have that, you sit down and wait for the next one. And this is just a continuous thing of going nowhere, absolutely nowhere. Because if you miss the other thing, it's just emptiness.
Yeah. You mentioned yesterday, because I wonder if you think that we perhaps are at a crucial moment in history. You mentioned yesterday in your lecture, you mentioned what's called the big reset, the big reset, and you can of course interpret that in different ways, I guess. But one of the tenets of this podcast is that it's called Mind the Shift, and one of the tenets is that we are in a big shift because humankind is truly integrating for the first time in history, as far as we know. There might have been civilizations tens of thousands of years ago that have perished, and we don't know about those. But as far as we know, we have never been integrating as we are now. So the whole globe knows in real time what is happening on the other side of the globe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So in my view, and in the view of this podcast,
you could say that it's both truth and not truth, because there's happening a lot of things, for example, in Australia, that ordinary people here in Europe don't know anything about. Why? Because the media is not promoting it.
Yeah.
So you
but
see,
there are other channels you can look at.
Yeah,
you know,
but you see, I know what you mean. But you should remember that despite the freedom of everything, we are being more and more limited in what is actually allowed to say, you know, and you cannot, we are living in a time you cannot ask critical questions without being called a conspiracy theorist. You cannot, I mean, this is really a problem.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree.
So
yeah, but you know, I think maybe the reason why you say this is perhaps that it's so obvious now because we are integrated, we are global. So when this problem arises, you can't flee anywhere.
Nope.
I mean, 50 years ago, you could always go to another country, and nobody would know that you were there, and you could start all over again, and you could have your other kinds of means of communication. But now you can't do that because you are connected with every other part of the world, and you can't get away. So then the problem becomes more salient. And perhaps this is I mean, depending on what you want with humankind, but it could be a good thing that it comes up to the surface, because it's so obvious that we are being controlled, as you're talking. Yeah. So then maybe something can happen.
Hopefully. Yeah. But it takes waking up and doing something about it, you know, to change it. Yeah.
But maybe we're in for it.
I don't know. We will have to see.
Do you see signs of this?
Yeah, I believe that something will happen that will change things, maybe overnight.
I mean, we have, for instance, Western science, which seems pretty intransigent when it comes to, you know, that matter is primary and consciousness is produced by the brain. But I've been interviewing several people who are, I mean, there is a movement of maverick and independent scientists who are actually understanding that this is not true, the truth.
Of course.
And they're working.
I mean, Einstein knew that.
Yes.
Niels Bohr, David Bohm, all these people, they knew about Max Planck. Yeah. They knew all about that. And the funny thing is that what I call ordinary scientists that really want to make a name for themselves, that they don't understand, in order to make that name and be original, they have to dare cross boundaries. Yeah. They have to go from the physical to the metaphysical, because there's no real answers in the world of questions. In order to have answers, you must go to the world of answers. And if you stay in the world of questions, you can only get limited answers, you know. So it's really, really, I mean, this is childish stuff, you know. Yeah. Even children knows about it, you know. So we are really living in many ways in a primitive time still.
Really. You knew what you were saying when you were 8 years old.
Exactly.
I tend to agree, actually.
So
I love this world, but I can understand what you're saying. It is primitive.
Just think about, we are 2021. We're supposed to be smarter than this. Yeah. What have happened? Yeah. We have still a lot of people suffering and greed and wars and stuff. And we are richer than we have ever been. Yeah, but what have it brought with us? We are sitting here dying in our own comfort, you know, without even coming near to the essence of who we really are and what we were sent here to do. And this is like hell in a way, you know.
Hell is also not a place; it's a state of being.
Of course, it's a state of being,
like heaven, just like heaven. Wonderful. Lars Muhl, where can people, the listeners, the viewers, find your work and your books?
Yeah, I would suggest you could go to my website, which is larsmuhl.com, and there you can read more and find where to go. And my English books is out on Watkins Publishing. That can be bought in all English-speaking countries. My French books is out in Flammarion in France, and my German books in Kamphausen, and my Dutch book in Edicola. I don't remember if there's any name for that publishing company here, but it said Edicola on my books,
Okay.
But I think there's that's an under, what do you call it? Another.
Yeah, I don't know the word either.
But anyway, it's in Dutch also. My books are also in Korean, in Serbia, in Russian, and and in Spanish. All the Spanish-speaking countries, they are out everywhere and can be.
But those of you who want to read all Lars's books, you need to know some Danish.
The Law of Light, the Gate of Light, the God Formula is out.
Yeah.
And also my book Taxoluma is out in Dutch.
Oh,
the only place beside Danish it's out here in Holland. And that's a very important book for me also. Taxoluma. It's a novel about or a vision about a female Messiah and about the time we are living in right now. It was written in 2012 and was a prophecy about what would happen, and we are right in it now. Okay. That book is about that.
What was the title again?
Taxoluma.
Taxoluma.
It's the girl who came to save the world.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Gotta read that one.
Yeah.
Okay, Lars Muhl, I'm so grateful that you took your time to speak to me and to Mind the Shift audience. And good luck now with all your light work out there.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
If you like this video and other interviews and talks on Mind the Shift, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. Thank you.